for our last speaker, I'd like to welcome Debbie Cunningham. So Debbie is currently the head of client services at the Foschini Group, and she forms part of the executive management team of Infotech, which is the group's IT division. As part of the client services role, Debbie heads up the BRM function for the group, and she's also performed numerous senior leadership roles before this role. She's headed up the store systems for the group with more than 3,000 stores, the CRM, customer relationship management function, and financial services systems teams in the group. And prior to that, Debbie was a senior BRM in the group, and I worked closely alongside Debbie. She added significant value to the group in her role. We're really privileged to have Debbie on the call. As per the others, Debbie, the 3 questions, I think you know them by now. I'm not going to read them, but welcome to the call, and it would be great to hear your views on these.
Great, thanks Baz, thanks for the introduction. And Dilshad, it's lovely to see you again. I'm so glad to hear how you've progressed and just where you've actually taken this BRM capability over across the waters on the other side. So I think I just see that now, and I think that's fantastic how you've grown within that. That's excellent. So maybe just to touch on some of the 3 questions. Sure, I had to when Baz was asking me to think back when I was trying to remember. Sure, it felt like a lifetime ago when I was a BRM, but I'm very fortunate enough to be leading the team of BRMs at the moment now, and it's quite interesting just looking to see how things have changed over the years. When I think we first introduced the BRM function almost more than 15 years ago. So I think just to talk through some of the questions. I mean, the first question, I think there's a lot of points that resonated in the talks that have happened thus far, and almost echoing what Jeremy had said is that, you know, I think there was almost an expectation that you become a trusted advisor immediately. And I think the thing that one learns is that trust is not immediate. You need to actually build that trust and nurture the trust, and that comes with forming the relationships and starting at the bottom of that tier and moving up. I think actually, you know, over and above the other items that everybody else has spoken about, I think for me, what was quite critical is getting that balance between IT and the business and make sure that that's correctly managed. So Dilshad touched on that as well. And ultimately, I think there's so much focus put on the business side and less so on the IT side. And I think it's really about building the relationships within IT to make sure that you're also able to influence what you need from a delivery aspect. But having said that, though, it's also about making sure that IT is correctly represented. Often the business might come and they might share frustrations that they might be feeling about a certain situation, but often sometimes that person sharing that frustration actually doesn't have the full context. And it's for the BRM to be able to constructively question that and then also clarify if there's a misunderstanding to a situation as well. I think in the beginning as a BRM, as a young BRM, you sort of just take things on board and just go, okay, IT must be the problem or there must be an issue. But I think over time, you actually learn that you need to critically assess what's happening. So I think one of the things is business wants to be heard. So you need to build that partnership, which allows them to voice their opinions freely. But I think you also just need to be very cautious about not accepting their viewpoints blindly. I think a couple of other things as well, and it talks to the comment about engagement versus partnership. I think over time as well, we've also realized that, you know, we've also got a responsibility of holding business to account for certain things that they need to deliver on. So when we start looking at the ROIs associated with implementations and what has happened, and the BRM plays a very critical role in making sure that you can drive the business to enable them to achieve that realization. Ultimately, it's not just IT's responsibility for that. And ultimately, the business also is responsible for driving that ROI. And I think there are times that they kind of make it IT's problem when in actual fact, there's a different responsibility that needs to take place. And I think lastly, just on that question, I think it's really not to take things personally. I think generally, I think as a young BRM, I took a lot of things personally when things weren't going well, and you really want to do the best for your business partners. But ultimately, you must just take on board what's happening and then obviously come back and use the partnerships that you have within IT to try and improve the service delivery so that it actually meets the expectations of what you need to do. So on the second point, how has being a BRM allowed you to add value to the organization? Sure. I didn't want to pull out on specific examples. I think I almost wanted to take it more from a generic perspective. Is that I think the benefit of being a BRM is that it actually created a platform for me to get a broader view of the organization, across both strategy and operations, and on various different divisions. And it could range from, in my case, I work in retail, so it could range from a trading brand, it could range from a service division, which could be financial services. And it was quite broad and quite vast, which was great because it gives you that whole bird's eye view of the organization. And I was very fortunate enough during my career as a BRM that I was invited to join the monthly business exco meetings, where I could actually sit and listen to their talk and conversation around the issues that they were experiencing firsthand within their business. I think often what happens is business often only comes to IT when they're looking for a specific solution, and often they don't articulate what the actual problem is. So sitting in those meetings and those forums, I was given the opportunity to actually hear what the issues were, and using the knowledge of the IT services that we had within the organization, you could actually start connecting the dots to say, you actually haven't come to speak to me about this issue, but I see it's an issue, and actually we've got something on this side that we can actually use to actually alleviate that problem. And I think that's where the true value started coming together for me as a BRM, is that by being able to connect those dots and showing that there's value in a certain delivery, whatever it might have been, the business actually, that trust just sort of embedded more and more. And then ultimately you were pulled into more and more conversations where they wanted your opinion and saying, where is the BRM, etc. So I think really just taking that into mind and using that, I think beyond the BRM role, I've actually been able to use that skill set that I've built up to also look at a problem and not just jump to solution mode, but take a step back, look at the entire end-to-end issue before then actually deciding on what solution you want to recommend going forward. And then lastly, I think just on the pandemic, I think just Jeremy, I think from your side, you were talking about old machines. I think we were also in a situation where our organization wasn't sitting with everybody having laptops, and it's about how do you mobilize 3,000 people out of a head office campus in the space of a couple of days. And I do believe, I think the benefit of that was that we had a very mature relationship already with IT and the business partners. So we almost became the trusted support base during this unprecedented time. It's something that they'd never anticipated. They looked to IT saying, can you help us? What do we do? And the business actually relied very heavily on the BRMs to be able to guide them on mobilizing their workforce offsite. But at the same time, also just trying to make sure that we could get them up and running and be productive as quickly as possible, so as not to impact the business at all. It was also, we were also in a combination, you might have pockets of people that were working 1 day a week at home, but there was a lot of divisions that actually had been so used to just working in an office, and for them it was all completely new. And I think the thing that we actually, and I don't think we even anticipated it, I think we realized that, you know, we're mobilizing people to work from home, but we didn't realize the heavy dependency that they'd have on IT once they actually got home. So it's one thing getting them up and running, but I think it was almost they had a quick question on something. And generally in those scenarios, they would ask their colleagues sitting next to them for help or whatever it might be. And we were getting an influx of all of these requests to IT just because they were looking for support and advice and guidance. And the BRMs actually played a vital role in trying to quell the fears that they were experiencing, giving them empathy to the situation, and then often either redirecting them or giving them the answers that what they needed. And I think through that period, having been the trusted support for them during that, we've already started having elements of circling back into the head office environment, almost in a blended approach. But since then, there's been such a tight partnership between the BRM and their business partners that definitely has far matured had we been sitting and never having gone through a pandemic. So if anything, that was the silver lining. And to be fair, I think going forward, it's those relationships and those partnerships that actually will take us forward into the future as to where we want to be positioning that role as a trusted advisor. And that's it, Baz, over to you.
Thanks, Debbie. Great story there. And yeah, absolutely, that seat at the table, not easy to achieve. And you know, sometimes it is the specific BRM that does that. You had a seat at most of your company's tables, and each BRM has to earn that. And some of the capabilities of the Institute is how to set that up so that the people coming after you don't have to start from the ground level. But yeah, it's been great to see that over the years. And thanks for sharing those insights, Debbie. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Baz.